Why does a screenwriter need a logline for their television or film?
The logline is the map. It's the through line, it's the space that I think guides everything. And I certainly know in the playwriting world, there's lots of opportunity, and I've done this and do it sometimes myself, where I come up with a character and I just start writing, or I come up with a small circumstance. But what I've learned in the TV world is without knowing who the central character is, what they're trying to do, and what they're up against, those three things which I think need to be in every log line, then a piece will just sort of ramble. It'll just sort of become this kind of thesis of a character's opinion, or it just won't feel galvanizing for an audience. And so the log line, that sort of central thought, that central idea crystallized in language is an essential piece to hold on to, I think, when creating anything dramatic.
What is your logline formula?
Yeah, my favorite logline formula is, this is a story about blank, who's trying to blank in spite of blank. And so again, you get who that protagonist is, and you can fill in other stuff, not only their name, but some relevant detail about who they are in the world, or how they come across, or where they are in their lives. Who is trying to or struggling to blank, which is about what they're trying to get done. Like, what's the goal of this person? Where are they headed? What are they trying to achieve? And then in spite of X. And there could be several X's. There could be a person, there could be a circumstance, there could be a physical ailment, there could be mental impairment, there could be something as big as the end of the world. But as long as you have those three elements, the person, what they're trying to do, what they're up against, then I think you've got a good spine for creating something interesting.
Do you find with the people that you take on, that you consult, that they struggle with this part? Or most of them know it when they come to you?
It depends. I'm actually teaching a class now with students who are finding it challenging. And I think one of the reasons people find the logline challenging is that we're all used to the TV guide logline. The TV guide logline is much more diffuse, and it's much more to sort of bring in an audience. It's not necessarily a tool for a screenwriter. So you'll see in the TV guide logline, something about, this is a story about the 1950s and a group of people who are discovering themselves amid the backdrop of blah, blah, blah. Well, that doesn't really tell me who it's about, which I always think comes down to primarily one person. It doesn't tell me anything about what they're trying to do. It tells me a lot about the atmosphere, and it doesn't tell me anything about the obstacle. So I think often when people step into the space of writing for the first time, or even those of us who've been doing it for a while, it's really important to remind ourselves to crystallize it down to those particular elements so that we have a through line and that we really know what we're doing, hopefully thematically and on every page of our script from beginning to end. It's a really great guidepost to have.
And this would be the same for a playwright?
Yes.
To plug in? Okay.
I think it's all the same, yeah. I think the form becomes different about how that gets executed. The theater scenes can be much longer, and of course the drama has to be crystallized between several people. You don't get a lot of special effects, or sometimes you do in certain Broadway circumstances or whatever, but it's really focused on emotional, psychological struggles between people, power dynamics, those sorts of things. But I think the essence is the same, to say who's it about, what are they trying to do, what are they up against.
Do you always write a logline before you write a screenplay?
If I am writing something for TV, I will always write a logline before I write a TV piece. I think in my process of writing plays, it can be different. I have started with characters talking, or circumstances where two people meet and they start talking. And then at some point, though, I'll realize when I get to sort of a space of diminishing returns that I need to know more, sort of as the god of that universe. like what's really going on. And then I will back up and I will say, okay, which of these characters, is the protagonist, and what exactly are they trying to do, and what is in their way. And so I always come back to a log line if I don't start with one. But in the TV world, I always start with one. And I certainly, if I'm in the rare instance, which actually happens a lot here in LA, where I'm pitching a project that I haven't written, the log line absolutely comes first, because I need to be able to crystallize it in order to sell it to a buyer or to communicate to somebody what it is I'm doing, particularly because it's not on the page yet. So I definitely do that first.
What are your thoughts on writing a vague logline because you don't want to give away the story?
I don't think a vague logline helps a writer, right? It's great for an audience. I mean, I can understand not giving away a story to an audience if the audience are the paying customers. But from inside the process, if it's the writer's room, if it's me inside my brain, I have to know where we're going. Otherwise, how can I chart the journey? Similarly, for if I'm selling a project to somebody, and you're the buyer, you're Warner Brothers or whoever, you've got to know if you're going to pay me money to allow me to write this and help create it, then you have to know what you're buying. So I shouldn't, the same sort of mystery that I play out with an audience should never be, I think, the mystery that I'm going to play out either with myself, my collaborators, or somebody who's going to buy the property, because they need to be on board. They need to be on board with the journey. And so, so all things can be revealed in the inner circle, but then with the audience, then I'll hold some things back so that they can enjoy the journey.
How many log lines for one story will you write?
It depends on the story. I think for many of my plays, there's usually one central one, and I will, I'm writing a play right now that only has 4 characters in it. So it's really about the journey of this one particular character. I think in the world of TV, when we have the breadth to tell more stories, as we normally do, usually there's an A, B, and C story, if not a D and an E story, then I think it's much easier to have parallel stories that hopefully thematically either bounce off each other or sort of, traffic in the same territory. So I think maybe for me, 3 up to 5 in the world of a TV script, and usually 1 or maybe 2 in a play.
Does each television episode have its own logline?
Yes, each television episode does have its own logline, and often because there are multiple stories, there may be several loglines in a given TV episode. One of the things that's interesting about that to me is that being in a bunch of writers' rooms, we don't always discuss that. Like we all bring in my experience, we all bring our techniques into the space, but then we're following the showrunner toward, what he, she, or they is interested in doing. So we may start talking about a story in general terms, and I will invariably come up with my own logline, which I may or may not share with the entire group. I'm not being the showrunner, but it will help me understand how to proceed through the story, and it will give me clues as to what I might suggest as we continue breaking story. So I'll clarify that for myself. But I certainly think, every story, every A, B, or C story, and every episode has its own logline. Each particular installment has, what this character is up against. Usually we know who the main character is, of course, if we're watching the show for that particular person. But what they're up against is specific and unique. And what they're trying to do may also be specific and unique in that episode.
And what about for a play, each act? Would you have sort of your own logline, or it's not really necessary because you have a general theme?
Yeah, it's really about one logline for the whole play. And then it's about how this, where we are in the structure, the beginning, middle, and end of it. Are we in the midst of the conflict? Which usually what I will do is I will get to the height of the conflict or some sort of cliffhanger, and that's where the act break will be of a 2-act play, and so I'll be like, okay, we're at this point, and now I'll say, intermission, But in that middle space of the play where all the conflict is, then I sort of know that I'm playing out this person trying to get whatever through these obstacles. And then, so I know at the end of the play, I'm going towards some sort of resolution. At the beginning of the play, I'm sort of ramping up into what the conflict is, but it's all one big story.
Will you research log lines that are in a similar genre and tone with the story that you want to write?
I don't know that I'm able to find what the original sort of useful, helpful logline is for a writer in any of my research. So I don't really know, I can't really tell you like what logline Shonda Rhimes, for example, was working with to create Grey's Anatomy. But I can watch the show and that's often what I'll do. I will watch something and I will sort of intuit and create a logline that matches that particular show or movie so that I can have, sort of a mental construct to hang my experience of that TV show or movie or play on. I can say, okay, now that I understand that this is a show about X trying to do Y in spite of Z, then I can watch it and see how that plays out throughout. And I can say that's probably approximately what that writer used, with probably different language, but I can learn from that. I can learn from being able to watch something and then reverse engineer what the logline probably is.